Okay, so you have a late 2024 first round rookie pick. What do we do with it? Do we stick and pick, or do we trade it for a valuable player already in the NFL?
That's right.
This is part two of a two-part series where we talk about values for each first round pick. If you haven't watched part one, we go through the 101 all the
Check
way
it
to
out.
the 106 in a super flex format. I'll try and link that here. You can go check that out. I would definitely say watch part one first, but here is part two. We're breaking down the 107 to the 112. Again, pick versus player versus trades, real trades that have happened that you guys have sent us. So let's start at the 107, Badaki. 107. This
Right.
is, I would say still a very good place to be because you're going to end up with either Roma Dunze or Brock Bowers at the worst case scenario. But there are some trades that we can look at if you are a win now team and you need a little bit of a hammer at the quarterback spot. I
Correct.
think this is probably where you can start to think about Dak Prescott.
Okay.
For whatever reason, Dak Prescott's a little bit undervalued. It says here with my rankings on the Flock Fantasy site, this doesn't reflect my rankings, by the way. That's the community rankings. I have Dak much higher than quarterback 17. But you can see here on the site, it says you're robbing them. But I've seen trades like this happen. For whatever reason, people are undervaluing Dak Prescott. Yeah, he's going to be 30, or if not already 30, but it's not like he's 35. He's right around the age of 30.
Right.
He's
right.
still got 4 to 5 to 6 years of prime play yet. He just had a season where he finished as a quarterback 3 in fantasy football. He averaged over 20 points per game, and he's about to get a contract extension with the Dallas Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. So if you're a win now team and you need a quarterback 2 to kind of boost up the roster, go get Dak Prescott. I don't think Brock Purdy would be possible here, but he would also be someone that I would consider. And we talked about this in in part one, but I think this is a beautiful spot for Travis Etienne.
Okay.
I do not personally think that you can get a Gibbs or a Bijan or a Brees with this pick, but I think this is Travis Etienne range. I think people are drastically undervaluing him this offseason, especially when you consider the scarcity of the running back position.
Okay.
It is so difficult to find a running back that you can trust, that you can rely on. Finished as a top 5 running back in 2023, despite having one of the worst run blocking offensive lines in the entire NFL. So I think he overperformed based off expectations when you look at that offensive line. Now,
Right.
if you're looking to add a wide receiver, I've talked about this before. I think Rashee Rice, now I think he's properly valued. He's my wide receiver 12 in my Dynasty rankings. But if you can somehow get this deal done and get Rashee Rice, I absolutely love it. Now, people are going to be a little bit nervous on him. What if Kansas City adds another weapon? That's the kind of people that you want to target. For some reason, DJ Moore, we're even having this conversation. I don't understand why DJ Moore is even being valued the way he is in the Dynasty
I
community.
have no idea.
Most people have him wide receiver 15 to 20. He's my wide receiver 9, I believe, in my Dynasty rankings. We're talking about a guy who averaged 20 points per game when Justin Fields was healthy. We're talking about a guy who is either going to stick with Justin Fields or get Caleb Williams instead. I mean, go get DJ Moore. This is what we've been waiting for DJ Moore to become his entire career, and it
Please.
finally happened. He finally broke out.
I beg of you.
I would also put Nico Collins and Tank Dell in this category.
Okay.
I love Nico here. I think again, those people who are worried. What is Nico the real deal? Are they going to bring someone else in? Are they going to sign T. Higgins? I think they already got T. Higgins with Nico Collins, if you get what I'm trying to say. And then, of course, if you're a win now team, Tyreek Hill here, you'll take this all day and go win a championship. Go win 2 championships instead of, taking a shot on that 107.
Right.
And then I think this is where, of course, Sam Laporta conversation can start to happen. And this is a non-tight end premium format, right? In a tight end premium, you're not getting this deal done, but it's certainly possible. There are some other names that you could consider. I've seen them go a little bit cheaper than this, but your Drake Londons of the world, your
Okay.
JSNs, your Zay Flowers, your Waddles, your Michael Pittmans. But if I had this pick, I think I wouldn't be panicking. I know a lot of people who have the 106 or the 107 are panicking that they're not in the top 5. This is Roma Dunze and Brock Bowers range.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't feel like you're in a bad spot. I feel like you're in a great spot to see who falls to you at the 107. And I personally don't think people realize how offensive heavy the NFL draft is going to be this year, Badaki.
It's
There might be one defensive player in the top 10.
it's wild.
Maybe none. Maybe none.
Yeah.
And I think people will be shocked when they hear me say this, but don't be shocked if Brian Thomas is in the first round. Don't be shocked if Bo Nix is. Lad McConkey, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell. Add a couple names that are kind of on the edge there. I'm not saying they all will, but don't be surprised if 4 quarterbacks, 5 quarterbacks, we see 6 wide receivers, something crazy like this. Don't be surprised, because that's how good the class is offensively and how weak it is defensively. And you have to keep in mind, if that were to happen, your 107 gains value. All of a sudden, it's not, dang, who falls to me? It's, wow, I got Adonai Mitchell who went to the Bears, or to the Bills. I got Roma Dunze who went to the Bears at pick 10.
Right.
I'm just throwing scenarios out there. What I'm saying is, don't feel like you have to get rid of this deal. You have to tear up right now, because there's still great options. Now, here's a real trade that happened in a league with Bartholomew Cornelius on Twitter.
What a name.
And I don't even know what format you're using here, my man, but I appreciate you submitting this trade.
Look at that shot, that screenshot.
107 for Travis Kelce. Now, I don't know if this is a tight end premium or not. If it's a premium, it would make more sense, but I love the 107 here if you can move off of Kelce.
Yeah.
Look, I love the Chiefs, and I love Travis Kelce. However, we're talking about Kelce's lowest points per game this year since 2016. 2016 was the year he broke out finally. That was 8 years ago. 14.6 points per game. His lowest points per game since 2016. We can see the cliff. It's coming. Time comes for all man.
Be careful.
But, you know, this could also be Brock Bowers. Imagine if you had Travis Kelce in your Dynasty League for 4 years and you traded for the 107 and you got Brock Bowers.
Right.
You're just passing the torch. It's beautiful. Now, what are we doing at the 108?
At the 108, man. By the way, it's Taylor's fault for Travis Kelce. Okay, keep that in mind.
That's the research we're putting in.
Remember that. I'm just trying to say Taylor Swift's name so we can get more viewership on this video.
Taylor Swift.
Please.
Taylor Swift.
At the 108 here, at the quarterback position, I would agree. Dak Prescott is a phenomenal point in time here to try and get a quarterback. But I think I'm going to bring 2 other names that I think maybe a lot of people might be a little bit surprised of. But if not, you can potentially get them later or at the 108. I think that's Jared Goff here at quarterback 7. Another guy who went to the NFC Championship, almost went to the Super Bowl. This team is backing Jared Goff, who's potentially going to get a contract extension. I'm maybe projecting his value to be at the 108, where I think at the moment
when the extension signed.
Exactly, when the extension is signed, because I think at the moment you could probably get him at the 110, 111, maybe even the 112. But the 108 is where I'm projecting. Same thing with Tua Tags, who finished as a QB9, had 2 good wide receivers in Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Once again, projecting the the contract extension here, where if he does get that long-term 3-year, 4-year contract extension, the 108 is probably where he's going to be valued. I think that's exactly where I'll feel really confident in 2 guys that finished in the top 10 in fantasy finishes. And that's exactly what you want. Guys that are really going to be producing on a week-to-week basis at the quarterback position. At the running back position, I don't love the running backs here. I can see some of these guys at the 108 falling. You can think of the Kenneth Walker, the Devon Chains. I might pass and maybe get a lower tier running back. I mean, can I get a running back at the 112, the 201? Maybe that some people don't value at the moment. You know, maybe you can get a Rashee Rice later, or Rashad White. Maybe you can get a James Cook later. Players like that, yeah, you can get your heavy hitters at the 108, but I think I would rather be investing in the wide receiver if I had the 108, if I was, you know, in a rebuild mode, or maybe even in a win now scenario at the wide receiver position. Talking about the wide receiver position, 2 wide receivers I'm going to be bringing for you today. Jalen Waddle for the 108. How do you value Jalen Waddle? Do you really envision, you know, I think one of the conversations we've always had is that Jalen Waddle has been taking a massive step back with Tyreek Hill there. The value is still there, though, and I think that he is going to produce for you at the 108. Do you go with Jalen Waddle, who is going to be with a decent quarterback and 2 tags, or do you take the shot? And at the 108 here is a Brian Thomas, is a Lam McConkley's, is a Troy Franklin's. What if they don't go to the best landing spot? At least you have a proven wide receiver who has been pretty decent in the fantasy community for the past couple years here, okay? And then Brandon
took a step back this year. I was just going to say real quick, like, it's funny, we quickly forget that he was a top 8 or top 10 wide receiver the year before with Tyreek Hill. It's just injuries efficiency went down and target share went down, which is concerning, but still a good player. Sorry,
Exactly.
just go on.
No, 100%. Still a good player. And then Brandon Ayuk, another guy. If he wins the Super Bowl, does he get a contract extension? He's there with Brock Purdy. This is a phenomenal point to get those wide receivers. And the wide receivers that you kind of mentioned earlier, this is the sweet spot. The Drake Londons, the JSNs, the Zay Flowers, the Michael Pittmans, all those guys I would add to this list as well. For the tight end position, there's only one tight end I really want. If I can't get a Sam Laporta because his value is significantly high, I want to get a young, as an elite, quote unquote, tight end as I possibly can that is still young. And for me, that is TJ Hawkinson. Now, with the injuries at the moment, that might be a little bit difficult. And I think his value technically probably would have fallen, especially when Brock Bowers does come in and maybe jumps him at the,
that Hawkinson might be the only place we've disagreed so far throughout these first 8 picks. I don't know about you. I don't want to buy him with that injury. That injury looked nasty, and he's probably not going to be ready to start the year.
I would agree.
And I'm concerned it'll take away some of his explosiveness and some of his abilities. I could be overthinking it, but I'm personally not looking to buy Hawkinson at the moment.
It's definitely a shaky one for sure. I think it just depends on how you envision TJ Hawkinson in this offense. I think if he's healthy, maybe it won't be in 2024, but maybe the year after. I still believe in TJ. He's still a young tight end, only 26 years old at the moment. But if I had the picks, the main position I am going to be trying to acquire here is wide receivers. I'm going wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver.
Sure.
In my personal opinion, I think the value is phenomenal here at the wide receiver position. Kind of like all those guys I've mentioned earlier in the video. Yeah. Real trades here by B-Town Buckeye, 12-team Superflex tight end premium. Look, this is a perfect example of trading a questionable asset for some new upside players.
I love it.
He receives the 108. He sends Will Levis and then Chris Rodriguez, which means absolutely nothing. Yeah, look, Will Levis could potentially be this.
Rodriguez means nothing, not Levis.
Yes.
That's what you meant, right?
Exactly.
Make sure people don't hound you in the comments.
Chris Rodriguez means nothing, but Will Levis, he does have a pathway, no question. Sure. But the Titans do have a top, 7 pick. They could get a quarterback here, and anything can happen. The fact that you get the 108, once again, Lamb McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, those are the guys that you can potentially get the 108. So this is a phenomenal trade here. Take us to the 109.
Yes, at the 109. Just before we get into it, do us a massive favor, guys, and smash that like button. We're trying to make this series the most valuable series we've made this year.
That's right.
Most valuable piece of information that we made this year. But by the way, if you don't know, our 2024 Rookie Report version 2.0 is already up on the Flock Fantasy website. If you want access to it, all you need to do is use our promo code LAND, become a Mother Flocker member, and you'll instantly gain access. Here's an example of a profile from Marvin Harrison Jr., but there are so many players in that package.
Correct.
Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight ends, a bunch of new features added this time around in version 3, obviously coming in March. You'll get access to that if you're a Mother Flocker member and using the code LAND, as well as a Dynasty team review. So many perks. But let's get into the 109. You talked about it earlier, Jared Goff. I love it. I think this is Jared Goff range. 109 is a perfect spot in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think we both agree he's about to get a contract extension. Yeah. So for whatever reason, some people are just undervaluing Jared Goff. If it's possible, go out and get it done. You can see the community has him at quarterback 19. That's way, way too low for me. Right. I also think this is Fields' range. This is where Fields becomes a risk reward. I think this is where it becomes risk reward for him. We don't know what his future holds. Most of us probably think he's not a Chicago Bear, but most of us think he's probably a starter somewhere in 2024. And for fantasy purposes, I don't care what you think about him as a player in the NFL. For fantasy purposes, he's one hell of a fantasy asset.
Agreed.
Now, I personally think the 109 is a great spot for running back. You talked about Ken Walker earlier. I love Ken Walker here if you can get that done. I might be a little hesitant just because of the Zach Charbonnet being there, new coaching staff. I'm curious to see what happens. I actually prefer a Devon Achane here. Some people might disagree. That's completely okay. I feel great about Achane. You'll know that was my guy in last year's class. But, some people are going to be willing to trade him for this because of his injuries this year. And I think what he did on a part-time role is great. And the last name at the running back spot, I think this is going to be extremely controversial. Give me Kyron Williams here. Give me Kyron Williams. I want to win my fantasy league.
Okay.
I want to win my fantasy league.
Okay.
I don't want to have the guy who had the best draft capital. I mean, I obviously want this, right? But my starting running back does not need to have the best draft capital, the ideal size and frame, but doesn't perform. All I want him to do is put up fantasy points. And very few running backs put up more fantasy points on a per game basis than Kyren Williams. I have no reason to believe he's not this team's guy moving forward. We talked about this in an earlier video. This was mid 2023 season. And we were talking about Kyren Williams, and someone said along the lines in a comment, they said basically, the Rams have nothing to play for. Kyren's injured. He's completely, like, there's no value. It's done. And I said to that person, what do you mean? They're going to fight for the playoffs. They got Matthew Stafford healthy. They got Sean McVay. This team is not just going to lie over and play dead. They made the playoffs. Kyren Williams got healthy. He was a crucial part of that offense. He averaged a ridiculous amount of yards per carry. He was super efficient in that offense. Now, Sean McVay can turn running backs into superstars. This is his running back right now in a weak running back class. You think this team that doesn't have the amount of draft picks that any team has had in the last 5 years is going to spend draft capital on a running back in the first 4 rounds? Why? When this guy just did what he did this year, why do they need that? Sure, they could add a compliment, but why would they need to do that? I think if you want to win championships, go get guys who score fantasy points, and Kyren Williams is one of those guys.
That's fair.
Moving on to the wide receiver spot, T. Higgins, I think, is in range here.
Okay.
I'll absolutely bet on him. He'll go to Cincinnati, or he'll be the number 1 in free agency for one of these teams. Yes, I'll bet on T. Higgins.
Right.
We talked about it earlier. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Drake London. I love all these names here. You could also add, in my personal opinion, the likes of a Jaden Reed. I know some people might not feel great about that. I'm fine with Jaden Reed there. Otherwise, you're betting on, an Adonai going in the first, an Xavier Worthy going in the first, one of these guys that you really love. We know Jaden Reed's already a good player. I think you could actually throw in Devonta Smith here as well. In some formats, you could get that done. In most, you won't, but just an idea. And for tight end, for me, I think you and I see this differently. That's totally okay. It's good to bring two perspectives.
Yeah.
I don't think you get Laporta for the 109. That is the only tight end I think I would even consider trading the 109 for. I just don't feel good about the rest of these guys. Not to say that they won't be good. I think Mark Andrews you can make a case for. I think even Kyle Pitts with the new offensive coordinator you can make a case for. But at the moment, at the 109, it's Laporta or nothing for me. And if I had these picks, personally, I think this is the range where you start to get some known commodities. Some of those guys that we just talked about, guys that can help you win now, guys that you feel good about that are young that can help you rebuild. And you take some risk on some fields. You take some shots on some guaranteed guys like your Addisons, your Londons, your Higgins, your Smiths. But again, don't be surprised if that 108 to 110 gains value. Right. If the NFL draft is so heavy in the first round with offensive players. Here's a real trade of a player that I just talked about, Jordan Addison. This is a 12-team Superflex PPR no tight end premium. He gets Addison and a second somehow and sends away the 109. Guys, if Kirk Cousins re-signs with this team, Addison is never going to go this cheap again in the offseason. It just won't happen. But regardless of what happens, I love betting on the talent of Jordan Addison, and I love betting on that coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell's been one of the most pass-happy coaches in the league since becoming the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. So I love betting on that situation and Jordan Addison there. What are we doing at the 110, though?
110 here at the quarterback position. I think this is where it gets slim at the quarterback position, in my opinion. You can definitely go get your Jared Goffs, your Tua tags if you personally can. But if somebody is saying, these guys got the contract extension already, what am I going to be doing? I think it's probably best to hold the 1010 or maybe package it like we've seen in other trades. Maybe have the 1010 and you have the 201. Can you package this up and maybe go get the 107 in somehow, some form? I'm not personally wanting to get a quarterback unless a quarterback is here. Maybe JJ, maybe he goes in the first round, or maybe Bo Nix goes in the early second round. Whatever that looks like, I'm happy to keep it. But the quarterback, specifically trying to trade for one, I think I might hold if it's not those guys that we already named. I would have to echo the same thing at the running back position. Now, Zach did bring up a good point. You think the Kyren Williams and the longevity and how weak this running back class is. Sure, you know what? with that take, I might be interested in a Kyron Williams if you can get him at the 110, but I'm not necessarily sure there's any other running backs. Like, Zach's been kind of saying the whole time, outside the top 8 to 10 running backs, I'm not necessarily sure if you should be investing in any other running backs at all outside of those guys. You can
Would
go
you
get,
put Achane here? I would, but I don't know.
I think, yeah, he can definitely be. It just depends on how
Okay.
you value him. I think it could be a massive risk to get a veteran guy. Maybe some people believe in Josh Jacobs because he's still a younger guy,
right.
like a Saquon Barkley because he's a younger guy. Players along those lines you could potentially go out and get. But at the same time, I think I probably want to tear down one more. Go get a James Cook. Go get a DeAndre Swift if he goes to a good spot. Go get an Isaiah Pacheco instead of investing in the 110 and investing in the 110 in a running back that's probably just going to be a little bit shaky in that area. So keep that in mind. The wide receiver position, this is a sweet spot for the wide receiver position according to the community. I mean, we kind of been echoing this for the past 3 picks, to be honest. Drake London, the Rasheed Rice, the Michael Pittmans, the T. Higgins, the Jackson Smith and Jigba, the Jordan Addisons. It just depends. You can throw a couple other names out there. It just depends on how you feel on them. Devonta Smith, DJ Moore in the community. I think you can get him at the 110 potentially. I brought him all the way as early as the 106, the 105, which is absolutely absurd. The Jaden Reeds. I would say this: if you're in a win now situation, and some of the following players are in the same situation, if you're in a win now situation and the following veteran players are in the same situation as we saw this past year, I might be interested. Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs. You might have to get something in return potentially, but can I get a Stephon Diggs? Can I get a Mike Evans? Can I get a Devontae Adams? All these guys, if I'm not mistaken.
Diggs in a second for the 110.
Exactly. Diggs in a second for the 110. Mike Evans in a second for the 110. Devontae Adams in a little bit for the 110, because those guys are going to help you win your leagues in a win now situation. Okay, just to give you a little bit more context there for the 110. At the tight end position, I think you need to throw in maybe a late second here for the 110 and a late second to acquire the following guys: a Dalton Kincaid and or Mark Andrews. I think both of these guys are the sweet spot. I know personally that Dalton Kincaid, I think he was, in the shadows of Sam Laporta this year, and he didn't really show. If Sam Laporta wasn't in this class, Dalton Kincaid would have had a really decent rookie year. That was just
tied in 11.
Yeah,
I remember.
That was just overpowered by that. Mark Andrews was injured for the majority of the season. That could have changed as well, which lowered his value.
Back half of the season.
Back half of the season, exactly. But which lowered his value. I'm still getting Mark Andrews with the connection that he has with Lamar Jackson at the tight end position. I'm going for all upside type of players here at the 110. Upside players or the players that can give me some win now capabilities, okay? Real trades by the football guy here: 1 quarterback, 3 wide receivers. His quarterback was Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, and Kenny Pickett. This is a great pivot off the 110 to acquire someone like a Trevor Lawrence. I mean, this is a steal.
But that's 1 quarterback, isn't it?
This is 1 quarterback. But at the same time, does Caleb Williams or Drake Mays, do they fall to the 110 or do they go later, or whatever the case may be? Anyways, he gets Trevor Lawrence here for the 210, which I think is really good, and you pivot off of Geno Smith. This is a good tier up here from the 110 in a 1 quarterback league for me.
Real trades happening, which is awesome to see. All right, at the 111, I don't think Goff is possible, but of course, if you can get Goff and you have to throw in, a future second or something, I really like that. But I don't think it's possible, but thought I would bring it up. How about, people are going to hate this.
Uh-oh.
How about Bryce Young? How about Bryce Young for the 111? Last year's 102 consensus, right, in Superflex drafts. This is going to depend on how you feel about Bryce Young. If you're the person who is saying Bryce Young is a bust and it's over, you're not going to make this deal. But maybe if you're the person who can see the context of his year, you might see some better potential play ahead, right? Terrible offensive line play. Not a single weapon to rely on that could get open. You look at some of these charts that people have out over on Twitter, looking at separation, and Bryce Young had the lowest separation from his wide receiver room of any quarterback in the NFL. Wasn't even close.
Right.
So he's trying. He's still, there's accuracy there. It's just no one's open. He's having to throw into windows that aren't available. He's making mistakes. The run game was awful. Like, the coaching staff was in dismay. His own coach that was supposed to build around him for a decade was fired in his first year.
Gosh, it was just shambles, wasn't
everything was an absolute shambles. New coaching staff now. They have money in free agency. We'll see. Like, by the way, if they go out and get a T. Higgins, they get a Michael Pittman somehow. I'm not saying this will happen. There's no way you get Bryce Young for the 111 anymore. No way.
No.
So if you believed in Bryce Young coming in out of Alabama and you liked him, I think this is a chance for you to take a risk on the 111. What are you going to get at the 111 in the draft? Maybe a running back. Maybe this is where Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks goes. Maybe Michael Penix if he goes in the second round. Right? A wide receiver that you like. Is Xavier Worthy going to be there? Did he get good draft capital? Or you can get a guy who was a number 1 overall pick, who will have plenty of time to grow in this franchise, within this franchise. So I like Bryce Young as at least consideration here for Superflex leagues.
Right.
And by the way, you don't get to buy the good players at a discount. Right? The guys who go perform, you don't get to buy them at a discount. You buy the guys who sucked ass, but you still like their potential at a discount. That's Bryce Young. I still think he could have a good career.
Love it.
At the 111, at the running back spot, I think this is James Cook territory. I think this is Isaiah Pacheco territory. I feel good about those two names moving forward. They're not in that list of 8 I really love, but, risk reward here versus the 111. And then Saquon, if you're competing, I don't know where Saquon's going to be next year.
Yeah.
But I do know he's going to start. So that is something that we can feel good about. I think Jaden Reed's in play here because a lot of people undervalue him. And I also think if you're trying to win right now, Deebo Samuel is a great pick. Now at the 111, I've been a stickler at tight end, but this is where I think Trey McBride comes into play for me. Now I will clarify by saying I don't believe you can send the 111 for Trey McBride. I don't believe it. But this is where I personally start to draw the line with these tight ends. And I think you could probably get this deal done in some leagues. How about Kyle Pitts? I know we see this differently, Badaki, but I personally think this is a great opportunity to go out and Kyle Pitts. A lot of people don't realize he was injured the entire year. Yeah, he didn't look like his old self because he was injured. He talks about that. The team talks about that. And now he just got a huge upgrade at the offensive coordinator position. The Falcons just hired the Rams passing coordinator from 2023, the guy who helped Puka Nacua break out, the guy who helped them introduce him with Cooper Kupp, the guy who helped Kyron Williams kind of do his thing over there. This offense could look completely different, and I think you should already be buying him. Some people will say, no, you have to wait until the quarterback's there. Guys, if Kirk Cousins comes here, if Russell Wilson comes here, if they draft Bo Nix, you won't be able to get Kyle Pitts for the 111.
Right.
It will be too late at that point. I'll bet on the talent. I still like Kyle Pitts. Now, if I had this pick, I personally don't feel bad about sticking and picking. I mean, every year there's a player that people don't like that got good draft capital that we just don't understand why they don't get any value. Last year for Badaki and I, that was Zay Flowers. I cannot tell you the amount of Zay Flowers that is on my roster simply because nobody wanted him in the late first round last year.
I got him at
Who is that player? Yeah. Who's that player that people undervalue that got good draft capital? That's a talented guy. Eat all that up in your rookie drafts in the late first. Now, here are some real trades that have happened. The username here is G749648440.
That's a big one.
12 team, 1 quarterback. He basically gets the 111, sends away Swift in the 3rd. Now, I personally feel good about this. I've talked about this before. I'm not someone who would like to hold DeAndre Swift if I can get a first-round value in return. In a 1 quarterback format, you're looking at an Adonai Mitchell here, a Trey Benson, a Jonathan Brooks. That's the kind of territory, as of today, we think that these players could be available in. It might be an Xavier Worthy, a Lad McConkey. McConkey's getting some hype, but, there's a lot of names here that I think you could bet on. And I prefer to do that rather than a guy who was traded for a 4th-round pick,
Right.
who's talented, but, might not join this team that had the best offensive line for rushing in the NFL. So we don't know what his future looks like. You're up at the
That makes
112. What
sense.
are you thinking?
All right, the 112, we close it out here right at the turn, essentially. You think about the 112 and the teams. If you're here at the 112 and you have the 112, you won. Congratulations. You
Yeah,
you won your
sure.
championship, and that's exactly what you want to do. That means you either have the perfect roster to potentially compete in 2024, or maybe you have the younger roster that just completely took the next level. What I'm trying to do here is trade the 112 if I personally can.
Okay.
Just by prefacing this part, my take here. If I'm at the 112, can I send this away for another 25 first? Doesn't matter
Okay.
where that is. I'm willing to take that chance because the chances is you have the 112 again, or you're gonna have the 110, which is a whole nother 2 picks higher, or the 105, whatever that looks like for you. Because maybe at the 112, somebody that does fall, that somebody really likes, you can trade away and maybe get a
And
higher draft capital.
that happens in the draft typically. It's harder to do before the draft, but if you guys trade in the draft like we do, oftentimes there's a guy that someone loves at the 112, and they're like, you know what? I love that guy. I would have taken him at the 108. Here's my first in 2025.
Exactly.
So I love this point. I love that point.
Exactly. So definitely keep that in mind when you think about the 112. Just kind of echoing essentially every single player that we kind of spoke about already. Jared Goff, Bryce Young. If you can get any of these guys at the 112, the Tua Tags, the Jordan Loves, I doubt you can't get any of those guys. But you get what I'm saying, right? You go for those quarterbacks. If not, you hold the 112 and pivot if you possibly can. Do you have the 112 and maybe the 201? Hypothetically, or the 203, can you package that up and maybe move to the 109, move to the 110, just to get you a little bit extra there on your roster potentially? The 112 for the running back position, this could be really interesting here. Rashad White, obviously, we kind of mentioned earlier, and then Saquon Barkley. I'm looking for veteran players. At the 112, I'm looking for veteran players that can help and impact my team as soon as possible. That still can give me some life. Rashad White, Saquon Barkley could potentially do this. I'm not sure if you can get it done, but maybe you possibly can. And at the 112 for the following wide receivers, some big names here, in my personal opinion, and some win-now names: the Jaden Reeds, the Debo Samuels, the Mike Evans, the Devontae Adams, the Stephon Diggs. The list essentially goes on. Can you go out and get a high upside player that you potentially like? I mean, this is projecting a little bit, but if Drake May goes to the Commanders, does Jahan Dotson value kind of rise again? What about that
Right.
Jaden Daniels? What if the Bears don't take Caleb Williams and the Washington Commanders get Caleb Williams?
Right.
Jahan Dotson could potentially move up there, right? Like, I'm just throwing out a little bit of scenarios so you guys can have a thought process of
Sure.
what you could potentially do when you get to that point after the NFL draft, because I think a lot of values are potentially going to change whenever you're watching this video, which can potentially help you in the long run. So essentially what I'll be doing with this pick is essentially sell, 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 going into the 25 first, or maybe pivoting and packaging my picks and or player to tier up to get maybe a higher pick in the draft, or potentially maybe getting a group of picks in next year's draft, which is really, really exciting. Shout out to the Hotel League. I went back to the Hotel League for us, Drink My Cola and Rowan here making a trade. And this is a great example of having the 112 and tiering up to get a significantly better value here. I think this is a win-win trade for both of these guys, but Drink My Cola gets the 101 and the 112. But Rowan gets the 108 and the 208. So essentially, Rowan had the 112 and the 101. He probably is already good with quarterbacks, or maybe he doesn't want a quarterback, or maybe he was okay with Marvin Harrison Jr. or Drake May or whatever, or Jaden Daniels. It doesn't matter. But this is a good envision of you tiering up with the 112 and getting the 108 and the 102. Which is, in my opinion, potentially a win-win for both of these guys here. So hopefully that helps, guys.
I look at that trade and I ask myself, what is it worth it to you to control the draft?
Yeah.
For Drink My Cola, it was worth the 108 to the 112 swap.
Because that helps, the 108. You think about the players that fall there. Brian Thomas
I was going to
Jr.
say, like, in most leagues, I take the 102 and the 108, but I think it's even value because you guys know the top 5 for me. I just love it. I don't care what order it's in. I want to be in that top 5.
Yeah.
But for Drake McCullough, like you mentioned, is it worth it for you to control the draft? For him, it was, and I don't think it's a bad trade on either side.
I completely agree there. So I love this trade by those guys.
That's it for today, guys. Do us a massive favor. Go ahead and smash that like button. I really love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Sorry we had to split this into 2 parts, but it'd just be too long as one video. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you very soon. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.